Hi, welcome to Constitutional Chats, hosted by me, Janine Turner,
and Cathy Gillespie,
with students
Dakari Chapman
and me, Tova Kaplan.
Join us as we discuss hot topic issues with constitutional experts. It's sponsored by Constituting America. My name is Janine Turner, founder and co-president of Constituting America. Welcome to Constitutional Chats. We're so thrilled you're here. Our series today is Amendments and You, and our specific topic today is what if the president never changed? So that today we're going to be talking about Amendments 20 and 22. So it's going to just be a most educational show today. My co-host is Cathy Gillespie, Jewel and Jorne Gilbert. We're so excited that they're here. And Dakari may pop on, so I'm going to briefly introduce us in just one moment. But we have a little poll we put up at the first. Oh my gosh, I cannot forget to tell you that our special guest today, our constitutional expert, is Senator Ted Cruz. And I would like to introduce my co-host more specifically. Cathy Gillespie is co-president of Constituting America. She's just an extraordinary person, the dearest, most wonderful co-president and friend anyone could ever have in the whole wide world. And she is a former chief of staff on the Hill. She is also one of the 16 private citizens chosen to serve on the U.S. Semi-Quincentennial Commission, where they're planning the big celebration of our 250th year of America in 2026. She was also the commissioner on the President's Commission of White House Fellows. So Cathy, if you would like to say hello very briefly and say, give a shout out to our sponsor today.
Yes, thank you, Janine. And you know, I've got one of the greatest jobs because I get to work with you every day and get to promote the United States Constitution, which is just a lot of fun. I want to thank our sponsors today, who are my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Don Hay. My dad is a regular listener to our Constitutional Chats program. He's on today, I'm pretty sure. Hi, Dad. And my mom and dad have backed our Constitution education programs at Constituting America since day one. And I want to thank my mom and dad, Don and Betty Hay, for sponsoring today's Constitutional Chat with Senator Ted Cruz, and for always being so supportive of all that I do. That means a lot to me and to our Constituting America team. Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Yes, it sure does. Now you've lit a fire to my mom. Let's see. My mom might like executive orders since she feels like she's an executive and can order us around. So mom, maybe you can sponsor next week's show, executive orders. My mom is also a board member and she's just terrific. But thank you, everyone. And thank you, our sponsors. We're so excited. Cathy's mom and dad. That's really terrific. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our co-host, and they just started with us last week and they got rave reviews. So I am going to introduce Jewel and Jorne Gilbert. Jewel and Jorne Gilbert are extraordinary young men. Jewel Gilbert is an executive producer, and Jorne Gilbert is operations director of Sing for America, a family-based company that the brothers co-founded. Sing for America seeks to show the art of truth and light through live performance. Both are proud former We the People contest winners. That is our contest, the We the People, We the Future contest. Check it out. Sing for America is an actor-run theater company which specializes in semi-professional musicals, private training in the arts, school drama solutions, I like that, school drama solutions, and public entertainment events, all while revealing a colorblind world on stage. Jewel and Jorne are graduates of Moravian College, where they each earned a BA in musical performance and dramatic production. So give a quick shout out, and then I'm going to introduce the rest of the team. Say hello, Jewel and Jorne Gilbert.
Hello, we are happy to be back and excited for today's show. So thank you guys for those rave reviews. We'll hope to keep them coming.
I have no doubt that you will. So just so everybody knows, Jewel, raise your hand so everybody knows who Jewel and Jorne. We can identify.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm
Jewel and Jorne.
and I'm
My process
Jorne.
of
Yes.
All right, very good. So I'm going to introduce, how are we doing on time? Because we don't want to talk over Senator Ted Cruz. I'm going to introduce Jeanette Cranack. Jeanette Cranack is a former elementary school teacher, a PTA president. Woo, that was a big responsibility. And operations director. She's our director of operations for Constituting America. She handles all of our outreach to schools, the school presentations and our speeches, and she speaks with me to students all across the country. And we're doing actually 4 speeches into the schools tomorrow and the next day. So Jeanette,
Yes.
say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Yes, Janine and I are excited. We will be in New York City virtually tomorrow, speaking to students, and we'd love to speak to students in your community. So go on to the front page, click on book a speech, and we will be in touch with you. Last week, we heard from an American Heritage Girls troupe that we'll be looking forward to speaking to them soon. They're here in Manassas, Virginia. And we speak to youth groups, Girl Scout troops, Boy Scout troops, classrooms. So I know, get in touch with us, and Janine and I will be happy to visit you virtually.
Yes, thank you, Jeanette. And I just might add that they're free. And also we have 2 programs. We can talk about the United States Constitution and teach kids how to write a petition to be an active part of the government, not just this is what they do, it's what we can do in the government, we the people. And the other program we have is how to have a civil civic conversation. So if you would like us, that's a really cool program as well. So you have 2 options. All righty, Aubrey is new to our team too, Aubrey Jackman. Aubrey is our media director. And you don't have a picture of yourself, do you, Aubrey?
Nope.
You need a picture of yourself. She's our media director and responsible for all of our technology. She's a winner this year for our We the Future contest STEM winner. And she was born and raised in Utah in the middle of 7 children. And she is a student at Brigham Young University and aspires to be an athletic coach. Say hello, Aubrey.
Hi, thanks for that intro. I'm really excited to work with this wonderful organization. It's awesome.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And okay, we did it. Now I'm going to introduce Senator Ted Cruz. So we have that. By the time he gets on, I'm sure we have a dashing photo of U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. There we go. All right, I'm going to talk to you about him. We are honored to have Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas join us today. Senator Cruz has been in the Senate for 8 years and represents, get this, 29 million Texans. That's a lot. I live in Texas. I didn't know we had 29 million people. He's a passionate fighter for liberty, limited government, national security, economic growth, and the Constitution. He's leading the fight in the Senate to support jobs, open up our economy, and to maintain America's leadership abroad. Senator Cruz is also a seasoned constitutional lawyer and fierce defender of the Constitution of the United States Senate of the United States, but also the Senate. We were honored to be able to present Senator Ted Cruz with the Constituting America Constitutional Champion Award in 2014. That was fun. He gave a wonderful speech. Senator Cruz is a graduate of Harvard Law School and clerked for Chief Justice William Rehnquist. He later served as the Solicitor General for Texas, where he argued 9 cases before the Supreme Court. In fact, he has currently argued more cases before the Supreme Court than anyone else in Congress. Today, we are happy to have him on the show to discuss our amendments 20 and 22, and also the amendments that he has proposed. That's why we thought he'd be a great guest for today. He is proposing an amendment to limit terms on the members of Congress. And I know a lot of people have been thinking that would be a good thing. And so I can't wait to discuss that with him. All righty, so when Senator Ted Cruz arrives, we will promptly go to welcome him. And I know term limits, Jewel and Jorne, Cathy will do a little bit of impromptu chatting. I think there's so many people that want term limits. Of course, we have an 8-term limit that you can vote them out. But, we have a lot of people. It's very funny because Dakare did a man on the street interview type of thing. And I remember one of the young youthful adults with whom he was speaking, he asked how many years they stayed in the Senate. And one of the girls, she said, a long time because they're all really old, which I thought was really fun. So, Jewel and Jorne, do you have any thoughts about Amendment 20 and 22?
Well, it just seems like,
Or our term limits in
Yeah.
general, let me just say.
Term-
Term limit, just stick to
Yeah.
term limits.
as far as term limits in general, for a representative republic, it just seems like it's something that we probably should have, because then being a representative doesn't become your job as a source of wealth generation. And it just seems like right now, it's hard to separate the two for our people in Congress, that where we watch them personally benefit. And sometimes we can't even really figure out how or why they've been in so long, or how they've become so wealthy. So to me, term limits seem like possibly the only way to make it definitively more true or more just. And then on the other hand, I know that being a politician over time definitely must change you. And I know that people must go in with good intentions, but it's definitely power. So power does something to you over a while, I think, right, Jordan?
Yeah, power corrupts. It's one of the oldest sayings in the book. So, I mean, going off of what Jewel said a little bit, I was looking at some of the guidelines for senators and congressmen, and I'm really interested to ask Senator Cruz about how these guidelines are really followed.
As far as personally
because
benefiting from office.
the personal benefits from office could be one of the greater reasons to institute term limits. And without these benefits, I wonder how long some of these people would stay in office.
Tell us what those personal benefits are. You have a list there?
Well, I just from study, you see that it really opens you up to a lot of different income streams as one resource. We have a gentleman that was in charge of our energy, the energy chapter, and he also had 500 million in coal. So you look at situations like that, obviously he's going to pass laws that will help the coal industry, because that will help him. So looking at situations like that, but I don't have a full list. Jewel, I don't know if you had put down any over there.
Yeah, because we also didn't.
Cathy knows a lot about this because she was a chief of staff. It is an interesting thing to think about the ability of how they can get rich being in office for so incredibly long. I know there are a lot of stipulations, such as if you're going to send a senator a gift, it can't be over $45 and things of that nature. And Cathy, I'm always really interested, because I know they're really pretty strict. And there may be some laws, Jorne, now that say you can't kind of have this. I know with the president, they were very concerned about they're very concerned about where they're, what's the word, where they may favor certain industries because they're invested in them. I think they're trying to really kind of work on that.
And here's
there he is. Yay!
Hello.
The conversation in our world stops the minute you pop on. Hello, Senator Ted Cruz.
It's good to see you, Janine. How are you doing?
I'm great. We're just really excited to have you with us today. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, I'm glad to be with you.
I've introduced everybody. Cathy Gillespie is co-president, and Jewel and Jorne Gilbert are our new co-host, and Jeanette and Aubrey are director of operations and director of media, respectively. We've already introduced you. So we are ready to rock and roll, because we know your time is limited, and we really want to talk about your amendment for a proposal for term limits. But first, we thought you might tell us a little bit about Amendment 20 and 22.
Sure. Well, the 20th Amendment was adopted. It changed the beginning of a president's term. It changed the beginning of a Congress's term. So under the original Constitution, the terms didn't begin until March. And so you had a really long lame duck period. between the election in November all the way to March. That was 4 months, and that didn't work terribly well. And so it moved it up to the beginning of January. It's set now what we have, the presidential inauguration on January 20th. It's set January 3rd as the date for the new Congress coming in. And that enabled the peaceful transition of power to move forward in an orderly manner. The 22nd Amendment set term limits in place for the president. And it says that a president can serve 2 terms. And that was adopted after FDR's tenure. FDR was elected president 4 times. He died during his 4th term in office. And after that, I think people from both sides of the aisle decided that 4 terms, potentially 16 years, although he didn't finish that whole 16 years, but that was too long for any one person to be president, that having a changeover of authority was good for the country. And so the 22nd Amendment was adopted to limit presidents to 2 terms each.
All right, very good. And so everyone's going, Jewel and Jorne and Cathy and I are going to ask questions, and I'm going to do one each and kind of go round robin here a little bit. So my first question for you is pretty simple. I just would like to know, I know about your proposal for an amendment, and gosh, won't that be exciting? Because Senator Ted Cruz, I think that amendments are so valuable to our United States Constitution and our country, and they're not being used anymore. It's either let's let the Supreme Court decide, let's do an executive order, let's let Congress do something. But I really like amendments, but you know what? It just takes too long. No one has that kind of patience anymore. So tell us about yours and how long you think it's going to take, and a little bit of the process, and then I'll have Jewel and Jorne and Cathy ask some questions.
Well, Janine, you're exactly right. The Constitution envisioned that the world would change and there would be different needs. And so it set up a process for amending the Constitution. And that process in Article 5 lays out how amendments can be adopted. One of the very first things the brand new Congress did was adopt 10 amendments. The Bill of Rights that was considered together was an incredibly important priority for many people, was vital to ratifying the Constitution to begin with, was the shared consensus that we would adopt a Bill of Rights. And it's the only legitimate means of changing the Constitution. Some on the far left today go to the courts and want the courts simply to rewrite the Constitution if they don't like what's in it. If you don't like what's in the Constitution, you have a mechanism to try to change it, and that is the amendment process. I have proposed a constitutional amendment focusing on term limits. And we have a very different federal government, a very different Washington today than they had when the country started. We have right now the proverbial swamp where there's a lot of corruption, where there are career politicians in both parties who have been here a long, long time, and their focus, their priority is staying in power. And the way you stay in power, it ain't complicated. You buy votes and you get in bed. Big government and big business and big tech, they all get in bed together. And they spend and spend and spend money. It's why we've got a national debt going through the roof, and why it keeps growing and growing and growing. And you end up with career politicians entrenching their power. And so I've proposed and introduced an amendment that would limit U.S. senators to 2 terms, would limit U.S. House members to 3 terms. That would require a natural turnover, so you wouldn't have the forever career politicians, but instead we'd move back closer to the vision of the framers of citizen statesmen, of people who were leading ordinary lives, who were running businesses, who spend a period of time and go serve their fellow citizens, go serve in Washington, and then they go home. They go back to regular lives. And that, I think that is perhaps the single most important structural change to weaken the corruption of the swamp that we see today.
I love this, and I know I can't wait to hear everybody else's thoughts on the panel here. I just want to ask another quick question. I know I'm supposed to do one this way. I usually ask a bunch, but today we're just trying to do one. But I will say it's going to be fun getting this passed through Congress, where Congress isn't going to want to limit their own terms, which is why I happen to love the Convention of States. Yep. And our second way of passing an amendment. Do you really think Congress is going to pass this about themselves?
Well, we certainly haven't so far. And you're right that there's a real divide. So I've introduced this amendment multiple times in multiple Congresses, and I've got a bunch of co-sponsors. I have 0 Democratic co-sponsors. So not a single Democrat is willing to sign on to term limits. And I have no co-sponsors who are longtime career politicians. The guys that have been here 3, 4, 5, 6 terms, none of them are co-sponsors. So all the co-sponsors are basically the young Turks, the folks who were elected relatively recently, are in their first or second term. And last year, I chaired a hearing on term limits. I was the chairman of the Constitution Subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And so I chaired a hearing, brought in witnesses to talk about the benefits of term limits. And, you know, there's an amazing divide. If you look to the American people overwhelmingly support term limits. Typically 70 to 80%, poll after poll after poll. And by the way, that's 70 to 80% of Republicans, but it's also 70, 80% of independents, and it's even 70 to 80% of Democrats. If you go to the American people, everybody supports term limits, except for the career politicians in Washington. And that's the one group of people. So you're right. I think if Congress continues to refuse to listen to the people, there will be more and more pressure for a convention of the states to get term limits and to get a balanced budget amendment. I think both of those Congress doesn't want to do. We don't want to limit terms. We don't want to live within our means. And I think the frustration of the voters is growing and growing. And my hope is that Congress will finally listen to the people, but Congress will not do so absent enormous pressure. And I think the pressure from the threat of an Article 5 convention is one of the means of putting more pressure on Congress to actually move and adopt a common sense constraint.
That's why I love our founding fathers and how they thought that through. I'm just fascinated with the Convention of States. All right, I'm gonna go to Jewel and Jorne. Jewel and Jorne, your turn.
All right, honored to talk to you, Senator Cruz.
Likewise.
So my brother and I actually operate a theater company, and we do a lot of work. We see a lot of people, and we get to go in schools and different things like that. And as you talk to people, even about something like term limits, where it's not necessarily political, it's more so common sense, and we may agree. How do we feel like we have a voice in the federal government? How do we effectuate change at that big of a scale besides the ballot box? Because that's normally the answer we get. But how can we get this done? How can we give you ammo, just us, even students, old people, everybody? How do we give you ammo for that?
Well, to be honest, you're doing it right now. And it's one of the great things about technology and advancement is you look even 20, 30 years ago, and it was difficult to know what was happening in Washington. Before you had the internet, information was slow. It was hard to figure out. It was like Washington was a black box that you couldn't see inside and figure out what was happening. We now have, with internet and social media, we have an ability to know what's going on. And every person, when you're talking to students, when you're talking to high school kids or junior high kids, they have a platform. They have a soapbox. You know, when I talk to kids, I tell them all the time, look, don't wait until you're 30 or 40 or 50 years old to use your voice. You've got a voice right now. And when it comes to defending freedom, you know, talking about the Constitution and Bill of Rights, free speech, religious liberty, the Second Amendment, all of these are fundamental rights that every American values and cherishes in their own life. And for young people, it's their future. If your free speech rights are taken away today, they could be taken away for the rest of your life. And so what we're doing right now, being part of this podcast, is the democratization of the press. It used to be there were 3 big networks and Walter Cronkite reported on the news and that was it. And now every person you're talking to is a news broadcaster, every young person. And so what I encourage people to do is use your voice, advocate for what you believe in, defend your freedoms, and do so with humor, do so with stories, do so in a way that's real. I tell young people all the time, listen, if you're in high school, your classmates are going to listen to you a lot more readily than they'll listen to me, that you've got a particular voice with your peers and friends and family, and use that voice. And a grassroots movement to defend liberty is an incredibly powerful thing.
Jewel and Jorne, what do we talk about at Constituting America? They're former We the Future contest winners. What do I always talk about? What is it I always talk about that you can do to share your voice and get it to your representative?
We can write a petition.
Yeah.
Start a petition.
All right, Jorne. What's your question, Jorne?
So for you, Senator Ted Cruz, I was looking at some government guidelines for Congress and particularly senators. So obviously you will have an area of expertise in this, but it said that you can only earn up to 15% of your salary outside of your Senate seat, and you're not allowed to accept honoraria.
Yep.
Now, I'm just curious, what do you think that these are always followed? Do you think that some of the corrupt are maneuvering these laws? Because
So in other words, if somebody
curious.
says that we already have things in place, we don't need term limits because they point to rules like this, what's the response?
So there are pretty vigorous ethics rules governing both the House and Senate in terms of accepting outside compensation, for example. So as a general matter, you can't have another job. You can't earn other income other than passive investment income. So you can have stocks and bonds and things like that, but you can't have other employment. You also can't get paid for giving a speech. So that would be one mechanism where if you're in the private sector, you can go give a speech, get paid for it. If you're a member of Congress, you can't. Generally, members of Congress follow those constraints. Sometimes they don't. And when they don't, if they break the law, they get prosecuted. And so you have instances, Bob Menendez, Democratic senator from New Jersey, faced a criminal prosecution with allegations that a big donor flew him down to the Caribbean on a private jet. And there were all sorts of allegations of corruption. And he was ultimately prosecuted and tried for that. There have been other instances. Duke Cunningham, who had been a war hero, Republican congressman from California, was a fighter ace in the Vietnam War, was charged and convicted of bribery, of essentially accepting big bribes in exchange for official acts. And so if you cross the lines formally, there are real consequences. So I think as a general matter, people don't. You certainly, any responsible member of Congress, you're trying to make sure you get legal advice on whether you can do something. Usually before you do it, you try to be very careful. The corruption we have, I think, is less frequently a guy in a trench coat with a paper bag full of cash in a parking lot. It's instead much more, look, the dominant urge for most members of Congress is the desperate urge to stay in office. I have joked that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. And there's a fair amount of truth to that. I mean, there are people get elected to office, and you know, Janine, you know the world of Hollywood, and it's there are not a lot of folks here who would qualify as movie stars, but you get elected to Congress, and suddenly you go to cocktail parties, and you're handsome and witty and wise in Congress, and your jokes are funny, and you're good looking, and what happens is people, when they wake up in the morning, they look in the mirror and they say, I am a senator. I am important. This is who I am. And they desperately don't want to get rid of it. And so where the corruption happens is lobbyists who support your reelection, and then you support their agenda, which is always spending more money, which is always growing government. Nobody lobbies for less spending. Nobody lobbies for less government power. And it's the series of subtle corruption that's not outright bribery, but it contributes to Washington becoming a swamp and both parties being in on it.
Perpetuates. Yeah. So much fun. Okay, Cathy.
Well, that's a great explanation, Senator Cruz. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask a few audience questions because the audience is just so excited to have you today. Jonathan Nash asks, why is an amendment required for congressional term limits instead of Congress just passing a law?
Well, because Congress it's an interesting question. So we had the U.S. Supreme Court considered a case, U.S. term limits case, where you had states that were trying to pass term limits laws. And the Supreme Court struck that down and concluded that exceeded the authority of the states. It was a 5-4 decision. Actually, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the dissent in that case, which is a fabulous dissent. It's really a tour de force of the original understanding of the founding fathers of how power was allocated. But what the Supreme Court concluded there was that the states didn't have that power. A federal law trying to impose term limits, I don't know that has ever been tested or tried. I think it would face similar challenges to the challenges that were coming from the state level. And at the end of the day, because you're talking about the structural constraints on how government operates, on who can be elected, the more natural avenue to do it is through a constitutional amendment. We talked at the beginning of the show about the 22nd Amendment, and that was obviously how we did it previously, where to enact a 2-term limit on presidents, we adopted a constitutional amendment. And, I'll say in that context, so one of the arguments against term limits, and it's an argument that has real force, is, well, gosh, if the voters want, they can vote you out. And I understand that. That's not a crazy argument, is to say, if the voters want to keep re-electing so-and-so, they should be able to. And a variant of that is other people say, well, I don't like most of the guys in Congress, but I like my guy. I like my senator. I like my House member. A lot of people have that reaction. If you look at the experience that led to the 22nd Amendment, FDR was elected 4 times. Now, we were in World War II. We were coming out of the Great Depression. It was a moment of enormous crisis. But there are also huge advantages to incumbency, powerful, powerful advantages to incumbency. And I think even though, look, many of the people who adopted the 22nd Amendment presumably had voted for FDR. They had expressed the views, we want this guy a 3rd term, we want this guy a 4th term. But then afterwards they said, that's really not good structurally. So let's put a structural constraint in place because we recognize the power of incumbency is really significant. And as much as it was in the 1940s, it's orders of magnitude greater now, where incumbents almost always win re-election because of the power of incumbency. And that contributes to the corruption of career politicians who are here forever. Whereas if you had term limits, you would cycle through, and instead of focusing every day on how do I ensure I stay here forever and ever and ever, it would let people get elected, promising the voters, here's what I want to do. And then they could come to Washington, fight for what they want to do, and go home. And would it solve everything? No, there would remain all sorts of problems, but structurally, I think it would move us closer to the vision the framers had in mind.
I have a thought about that, and I want to try to go back round robin again with our second question. Cathy, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no, go ahead. You can come back around.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to ask a question. Speaking of arguments against term limits, Kelly Ayers had asked, if you limit time in office, how do you manage committee leadership? Would committee chairmen have enough institutional knowledge to lead wisely?
Look, that's a reasonable point. I'll say there's a difference right now between Republicans and Democrats in Congress, which is Republicans coming out of the 1994 revolution, when Republicans took over Congress, and Cathy, Ed was very involved. Your husband was very involved in that 94 revolution. One of the things that came out of it was imposing term limits on committee chairs on the Republican side. So we limit in the Senate, we limit a committee chair to 6 years. We limit a ranking member, which is the senior person in the minority, to 6 years. And that results in more turnover and more widespread leadership. The Democrats don't do that. They will leave someone as a chairman forever and ever and ever. And so they believe in concentration of power. I got to tell you, yes, it's true you get institutional experience, but you also end up sometimes getting some committee chairs who are older than Methuselah and who, look, let's be honest, are sometimes no longer the sharpest knives in the drawer, that we're all on a journey of life. And as we get older, we don't always have the mental acuity we had at younger stages in life. And we've seen instances where committee chairs have been around so long and they're so old that their staff run everything, that the member is no longer able to be a really engaged chairman. And so the staff, who are unelected, who nobody knows, make all the decisions anyway. And so an advantage of term limits, I actually think having younger committee chairs who are more energetic, who have an agenda, who have passion, who are engaged, I think that actually produces a better committee process than petrified and stultified leadership that served alongside Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, well, we only have like 7 minutes left, so I want to make 2 quick little statements and ask a quick question and get Jewel and Jorne a chance to ask one more quick question. But first, I want to go back to what we were talking about laws stating that there should be term limits. I don't think we should get in the habit of having laws overturn amendments or the Constitution. If laws start overturning the Constitution, it's going to be too easy, and that'll be terrible. And whoever has the power.
That's exactly right. I have not examined the arguments if there would be any way to do it by a statute. You certainly can't overturn the Constitution. The question would be whether you can add additional requirements. As a general matter, the Supreme Court has said, no, you can't. That's another reason why a constitutional amendment would be needed. But the principle you're talking about, Janine, is exactly right, which is a law cannot contradict the Constitution. If the two are in conflict, the Constitution prevails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would scare me. I think that it's supposed to be a deliberate process. And in my opinion, laws can be overturned and fluctuate.
Yep.
If orders can fluctuate, but amendments, except for prohibition, are really solid and they stay. And so I think the vacillation of a law returning the Constitution would be really dangerous. Okay.
Well, actually, Janine, on that example, that's worth pausing to reflect for a minute. So prohibition, we had an amendment that prohibited the sale of alcohol in the United States. And we had a period of prohibition, and we had the rise of gangsters and Al Capone and all of that. And the country went through a few years of that and realized, hey, this doesn't work. We don't like this. And so the process of getting rid of it wasn't going to a court and asking a federal judge, hey, we really dislike this amendment we just adopted, so just erase it. No, the country passed another amendment to repeal prohibition. And that's the way it is meant to operate. So you've got one putting prohibition in and a second taking it out. That's the right way for it to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And I just think we're out of the habit of it because there's a lack of education about it. And I just want to make a note that the way it's done in Texas, which is sent, the legislators meet every, 2 years, and they're only down there for a limited amount of time, and they have a balanced budget, and then they go home to their jobs, is certainly the way I think DC should do it. But my question to you is, in the countdown here, because I want Jewel and Jorne to ask another question. We had a winning student in our contest when we were talking about amendments, and I always ask the kids to participate. He said that an amendment he would like to have is that the president served 1 6-year term, because then there wouldn't be all this re-election business happening, in the last 2 years of 4. So what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I think it's a reasonable idea, and that's an idea others have discussed as well. I think that would work fine. My basic view of it is the way we have it now at the presidential level works fine as well, that having a 4-year term and 1 re-election, I don't know that I'd be all that compelled to change it, but if we had 1 6-year term, I don't know that I'd be all that compelled to change that either. I think either way would work. You don't have the same problem of people being reelected forever and ever and ever anymore in the presidential because of the 22nd Amendment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good deal. All right, so we'll do a lightning round. Jewel and Jorne, maybe y'all can collectively ask one question. Cathy can ask one more, and we'll let Senator Ted Cruz. This has been fantastic as always. I remember when you used to come on my radio show. We talked for 45 minutes. It was so much fun. And I do want to just throw out there that when you wrap, before you go, you can tell us all how we can get behind this amendment and help, if those of us that would like to help you. Okay, Jewel and Jorne, quick question.
Yeah, could you just tell us for we're first graders, how does the amendment process then work once again? So what would be the next step, and then the next step, and then it'd be an amendment?
Well, for an amendment to be passed into law, 2/3 of the House of Representatives has to vote for it. 2/3 of the United States Senate has to vote for it. And then it goes to the states. There are 50 states. 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. So the individual states have to decide, yes, we want that amendment. And when 3/4 of the states ratify the amendment, then it becomes an amendment.
All right.
Okay, but you want to walk through the Constitutional Convention aspect of that? So if they don't do it?
So the Constitutional Convention Act, there's a different path where it can come from the states. The states can call for a constitutional convention, and it's the same threshold where if 2/3 of the states call for a constitutional convention, then the states would send delegates to a convention to propose amendments, to propose one amendment or multiple amendments, and then whatever amendment came out of that constitutional convention would then go to the states and have to be ratified by 3/4 of the states likewise. So there are two avenues the amendments can come from. We've never gone down the road of a constitutional convention other than the very first convention that gave us the Constitution. And in that instance, the convention that was formed was called together to propose amendments to the Articles of Confederation, which was the earlier document creating the precursor to the United States of America. And instead of proposing amendments, they sat down in Philadelphia and wrote a brand new constitution and created a new country. And so on the question of a convention of the states, there's always been some hesitancy or concern that it could go that direction as well and try to rewrite the whole thing. And so there's a debate back and forth as to the best mechanism. The interaction between the two is repeatedly over the decades and over the centuries. There have been citizen movements that have threatened a convention of the states. And in some instances, that threat got imminent enough that it got Congress off their rear ends to actually act and propose the amendments that the people were pushing for.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have like 60 seconds, Cathy.
Okay.
So maybe a 60-second lightning round question. Senator Ted Cruz, thank you so much. Cathy?
Well, Senator Cruz, one other constitutional amendment you're pushing that several of our listeners have asked about is the one to limit or to keep this current size of the Supreme Court. Would you want to take just your last few seconds here to tell us a little bit about that one?
Well, sure. We have 9 justices on the Supreme Court. The number is not set in the Constitution. It has been as low as 5. It's actually been as high as 10, but it has been at 9 for 150 years. And right now we're seeing a number of Senate Democrats threatening to try to pack the Supreme Court to add 2 or 4 new left-wing justices. I think that'd be a serious mistake. It would politicize the court. So I've introduced an amendment to say the Supreme Court should be 9 justices, not more, not fewer, that's the right number, and it's worked for 150 years.
Thank you.
Great. How do we support you in this? If our listeners, I mean, do we sign a petition? I mean, call our representative, how can we help?
All of the above. Speak out, use your voice, engage, do what you're doing now, but become educated, become a well-informed citizen and voter, and speak out to your to your classmates, to your friends, to your family. Get people engaged. You know, the process of democracy is not easy. One of my favorite quotes from Thomas Jefferson is Jefferson said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be." And so informing yourself and fighting for liberty, that's the only way we keep liberty, is to fight to defend it. And every day I take the responsibility of fighting for 29 million Texans, fighting to defend your free speech, your religious liberty, your Second Amendment, your fundamental rights. That is the core of my responsibility. And it's something each of us as Americans, I think, has a responsibility to do.
Well,
There you go.
You do. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
You guys
Senator
are
Ted
awesome.
Cruz. Thank you. Okay, appreciate it. Have
Take
a great
care.
day.
You too.
Senator Cruz.
Bye.
Thank you.
What does everybody think? That was a
Yeah,
treat.
I don't think that we really consider all the pathways that were laid out in our Constitution in order to affect change. We think along the lines of making laws, and we think along the lines of the Supreme Court, and we think that the president has a certain amount of power, but I don't think the general public considers amendments very often. And I know even personally, being someone who's, written 2, 3, 4 speeches about the Constitution, and particularly even about the amendments, I still don't think about it when it's probably in certain areas like what he spoke about the Supreme Court. That's what the founding fathers designed for us to go when we needed to get something like that done. It wasn't to be done in the House of Congress or Senate or by the president. It was meant to be right back to the source, the Constitution.
Well said. Anybody else have a thought? Aubrey and Jeanette, you can pop in if you want to. Cathy, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say we had so many great audience questions and comments we didn't get to, but Warren Heck asked, was there any discussion by the founding fathers about putting in the Constitution term limits for the president or members of Congress? And before our show, I had looked up one of our 90-day studies on the amendments and found a great essay on our website about the 22nd Amendment. And the author, William Duncan, actually talked a little bit about the debate between the founding fathers on the issue of term limits. And interestingly, Alexander Hamilton was against term limits. And he said, nothing appears more plausible at first sight, nor more ill-founded upon close inspection than a scheme which in relation to the present point has had some respectable advocates. I mean that of continuing the chief magistrate in office for a certain time and then excluding him from it, either for a limited period or forever after. And so I guess there was some feeling among the founding fathers that term limits were not a good idea. But then our essay author also talks, of course, about George Washington, who set the famous precedent of only serving 2 terms. And our essay author said that he thinks Washington was drawn both by principle and by Mount Vernon on only serving 2 terms. But he thinks probably
and
principle.
All the rancor, there was so much rancor at that point. I mean, between Jefferson trying to take him down and Madison trying to take him down. I think he felt he'd he'd done his duty, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Cathy. That's really interesting. Aubrey, Jeanette, Jorne, anybody else have a thought? What I'll say is I think is interesting is that we just need to put enough pressure on the Congress to do something. If you don't want a convention of states, what Senator Ted Cruz was saying is you have to create enough pressure that they listen and say, well, we better do it or they're going to do it in a convention of states. But boy, I believe in them, but I think it's going to take a lot of effort. Anybody else? Pop in.
I think it has to affect people personally. People really have to take care and have an opinion about it. I know as a young person, when the 26th Amendment was passed, I had siblings that were 6, 8, and 10 years older than me. And it was a huge deal in our household that they were all, going to be able to vote. I had a brother that was 20, I had a sister that was 18, and so it was exciting. And I remember it being a big issue in our home. So I think if people had a vested interest in the amendments, we would see a lot more people writing to their congressmen and supporting them. So I guess just educating people about the amendments and how they affect personally your life, your home, your household is the way to make change.
That's what we're always focusing on, how it affects you, because then it becomes reality. It's not just something that happens up there. And there's just not the reverence for the Constitution in the household. Unfortunately, people are watching Netflix or some movie or have, they're listening to some podcast in their ears or whatever, and they're not sitting around the table talking about these things anymore, which is unfortunate. I see Dakari. Is that what you're going to say, Cathy?
Yep.
Dakari,
Hey.
hi.
Hi,
Dakari,
everyone.
we're glad you're here.
Hi.
I want to tell everyone, Dakari is a student ambassador for Constituting America. He's a former 2-time winner of Constituting America, and he's a working actor, always on a set doing something fabulous. Hi, Dakari. Did you hear the interview?
I heard bits and pieces. I thought it was quite amazing. I would run, when we had cut to try to hear what was going on. So I'm glad to be here. And it was what I heard was great. And the Constituting America never ceases to amaze me with the guests and the information that's provided and just everything. So if you're like me and you soak information up like a sponge, that was a lot of information to soak up for sure.
Well, we're glad you're here. Do you have any thoughts about term limits for congressmen and women and senators, as well as the limiting the Supreme Court to 9?
Everything that Senator Cruz said, I I thought was great. I mean, I don't see why not, right? And so I wish I could have been the one that proposed that and came up with that. So I think that's really awesome.
Okay, good deal. Cathy, and I want to get back to Jewel and Jorne and Aubrey pop in. We have about another 10 minutes here, 8 minutes. Cathy?
Yeah, George Mayo writes, the very best term limit idea is the educated, motivated, and informed electorate. And that was something that Senator Cruz mentioned as well, that we all have to make sure that we're out there. Until we get term limits, we have to make sure that we're out there exercising our vote as our voice.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was really interesting how Senator Cruz said that no one who has been in office longer than 2 terms wants to sign on to this. And then the people that have been there a long period of time have no interest in term limits. I thought that was interesting, and he had another example too. But I also thought it was funny how they all think they're movie stars. I'm important now. I need this, the glamour of it all. Jorne, Aubrey, you look like you want to say something. I want to go back to Jorne.
I was just going to say, I loved how he said like what we can do, how we can contribute. And one of those things is to be educated. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Constituting America is it provides this time every week for these chats to come and become educated about our rights and our freedom of this country and the beauty of the Constitution and how we can contribute to that and be contributing citizens. I just think that was an awesome piece of advice from him.
Mm-hmm. We the people. Okay, Jorne.
I'd say that it was just a very, very insightful talk. I think it's very important that you remind people that the Constitution isn't only something that happened in 1776. Amendments are always being added, even decades ago. So it's never too late to amend something. So you don't have to look at it as if it's a fixed document. And for people to realize that is a very important thing.
And I think that's also a funny mix with the living document discussion, because
yes, it's
living, but not in sometimes the way that people think it may be living. We could make it living by amending.
Yeah. It's not fixed. You don't have to destroy it to change it. I think that's really important. And really just getting people to understand that once a politician is in their respective role, once they're in Congress, you don't just go vote for them because they're there. I think oftentimes congressional races are very lost to the people, and it's more so, just vote for them because they're there.
Straight ticket.
A lot of people I know, they don't know who's running for Congress. They just vote. They vote for president and whoever's below the president. So I think that getting that information into voters' ears is also very important. It might really change the outlook of this conversation right now if voters did think about actual congressmen and looked at what they were doing, not just their party.
That's what we try to teach when we go into the classrooms about writing a petition and understand that they can call their representative in their zip code, and that they're there for them. And like Senator Ted Cruz was saying, no matter what your age is, you're not too young to call your representative. And I think so often it's something that happens up there in people's minds, and they don't realize that really it's what we do. It's from the ground up that it's supposed to manifest. Also, I just really believe that we need to educate more about the amendment process and how important it is, because it's methodical. It's judicious. It incorporates a federal type of government where you have the national government and the federalism with the states. The people, everybody participates in an amendment. It's really, really, really thoughtfully written. And it frightens me to think about laws overturning an amendment, because I think that's very dangerous, very quick, very political minded. It's a whim. It's with the blowing of the current political fervor. It just doesn't have the thought behind it. And we want to always teach other people in our lives that the amendment process is really, really quite wonderful. All right, we're about ready to wrap up here. Anybody else? We have 3 minutes. Cathy, do we have anybody else who's given us a question?
Well, John Peeler says that Senator Cruz is one of our greatest advocates of limited federal government. Please ask him to come back soon to talk about the enumerated powers of Congress, which he is great on. And we have our acrostic that we use on that he told us about. More specifically, why would our founders enumerate the allowed powers of Congress and then turn around and erect the elastic clause? This clause has been interpreted to mean that Congress has the power to control almost everything in our lives at the expense of the people of each state. The limits of enumerated powers are meaningless with that clause. It would be fascinating to have Senator Cruz come on sometime again and talk about enumerated powers.
I don't know anything about the elastic clause. I don't know what that is. Do you, Cathy?
I don't know a lot about it. That's why I think it would be interesting to have Senator Cruz come back and talk about it.
Yeah, I've never heard that. All righty. Anybody else? I'll just elaborate a little bit about Texas and how it works here. And I really believe it's how our founders wanted it to be. In Texas, our legislators and state senators and state legislators only go to Austin every other year. And then when Cathy, you probably know too, I think when actually they're in session, it's a short period of time. It's not even the entire year, is it?
No,
I don't think it's
January to May, basically. Unless they,
right.
A lot of times they extend it.
Yeah. So think about that. Our legislators and senators only legislate for 6 months ish in the course of 2 years. And then they go home which is really lucky for me because one of my legislators is my vet, and I really don't like it when he goes away. I'm like, I'm glad you won, but I'm not glad you won. But he comes home a lot Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to be amongst his constituents. But I like that. I think if we had more representatives in the U.S. federal government living at home, living amongst their constituents, having a real job, then we wouldn't have the kind of intense power that sometimes snowballs out of control out of Washington, D.C. Any closing thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think the less time for them to meet, the better, really. So, but I want to thank our sponsors again, Don and Betty Hay, for making this program possible, and encourage everyone to come join us next week. We're going to be talking about executive orders, and that'll be on March 16th. And then March 23rd, we start a 4-part series on natural law that we're very excited about. So come learn what natural law is and how it affects you.
Very excited about our natural law, very excited about executive orders. But I will say one last thing about what we were just talking about. If we didn't pay them so much money, they would have to go home and work. I think the state legislators and state senators only make like $50 a day or something. It's crazy. So if we didn't pay them all that money, they'd have to go home and work. Aha, maybe that should be in the next amendment. Right, everybody?
Agreed. Agreed until I get to Congress, then we can have a pay increase.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. I mean, they make a lot of money. It's like $180,000, $200,000 is a lot of money
Sounds
to be
good to
made.
me.
Yeah, but that's why they stay up there. And
Of course.
okay, well, thank you, everyone. Takari, glad you could make it. That doesn't look like a set. Are you filming in someone's house? You don't look like you're in a trailer.
Yeah, we are. So I'm actually in someone's house.
Yeah, it's changed, in the day when I started, when I was your age in Hollywood in the late 70s and early 80s, everything was done on a sound stage.
I know.
And so you had these.
We've used the stage like 3 times, and like I'm getting used to it. I'm not as used to it as being on location somewhere. So
it's changed. It's changed now. Now people film in all kinds of different places, but I still love the sound stages.
When I'll just tell you hear that bell ring, Janine.
Yes, I love sound stages. When I was 17 years old and wearing little cotton flowing gowns, and I was walking along, I don't know, whatever lot it was, MGM, I passed Gene Kelly and he winked at me. And people, Cathy, you know who Gene Kelly is. I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
I love that.
Yeah, it was fun. And people on their bicycles, and I love sound stages. I wish they did more. I haven't really done much I've done a few things. Dallas in 1980 was on a sound stage. Leave It to Beaver was on a sound stage. But of course, you know, we had a sound stage on Northern Exposure, but it was in Seattle. I'm talking about Hollywood sound stages.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and I worked at an Italian soundstage, Cinecittà in Rome, filming Cliffhanger. That was fun too.
Wow.
And what is his name? What's the very famous Roman Jeanette? You might know. Oh gosh, he was so famous. An Italian director. Can't think of his name. And he signed an Apple box for me. And he was famous. He did 9. I think he did 9, the movie 9 or 9.5 or whatever. Oh, someone Google it quick. The director of 9. Anyway, he signed an Apple box for me. It's one of those boxes that you stand on so that you're taller. And I took it home. I thought, oh, this is so valuable. Oh my gosh, he signed my Apple box. It got tossed accidentally. Gone forever. Okay, now look, did someone Google Italian? We just have to close with that. Hang on. We're just having a little bit of fun here. Hang on. Italian director, movie 9 or 9.5. Someone could probably type a lot faster than I can, especially under pressure. Okay, let's see. It's driving me.
Is it Rob Marshall?
It was Fellini. Was it Fellini? I think it was Fellini.
Yeah, one of
Federico Fellini.
Fellini.
It was Fellini. Yeah. And anyway, okay, there you go. That's my Hollywood lore.
That's so fun. Janine's Hollywood stories are my favorite. I wish Hollywood was still like that.
Yeah, well, Dakari, you got to go get some stories to tell us now. Go do something crazy, but don't get fired.
I won't. I promise.
He already
Keep
has a lot
acting
of stories.
phenomenally.
Jewel and Jorne, y'all have a lot of stories as theater actors, and I've written a play, so you know y'all are stars in your own right.
Yes, we remember. I have a story about back when we did, first when we did kind of more like what Dakari did. I was supposed to be in a commercial with Adam Sandler, and we're doing the commercial. It's going great, but Adam Sandler's not there yet. He didn't need to be on set at the same time as us, but he was coming to take us out. So everybody was so excited because Adam Sandler was taking us to a 5-star steak place in New York City after our shoot. And eventually that 5-star steak place became just like a 3-star. And then eventually Adam Sandler wasn't coming on set. And then eventually we just got some hamburgers in a bag and no Adam Sandler. So I hated Adam Sandler for about 10 years. And then I quit acting.
That is so fun. You quit acting because you didn't get your steak dinner from Adam Sandler?
Pretty much.
Well, I'm glad you're back. Yeah, usually it's pizza. It's pizza on. That's you get your nice catered lunch and then it's pizza.
Yeah, we didn't even eat meat. So I couldn't even have the hamburger.
Oh my God. Oh no. My favorite wrap party was in Venice, Italy. It was just so romantic. When I worked in Italy, they actually had lunches where they had pasta dishes and you had an extended lunch and it wasn't this, 30 minutes back in hair and makeup. And we had a wrap party in Venice in this beautiful built, Gothic, beautiful. It's not Gothic in Venice. It's Constantinople. It's kind of it's Byzantine. It looks like Byzantine. And we were in a set, and the whole wrap party was this long, beautiful table with candles lit. No light. It was all just candles. It was so cool.
Beautiful. Those
are the days. Those are the days. Those are the days. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Cathy is just really wanting us to go.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
All right. See you, everyone. Have a great week.
Cathy has a daughter in Hollywood, a future screenwriter. All right, everyone. See you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Dakari. Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks, Jeanette. Bye.